Good? Today's lesson, second day of 2-2, which is on finding exact values of trig functions given certain angles. Okay? Sponsored, of course, by the Deli and Golfapalooza. We'll talk about that later. So, all right. So here, and this is exactly what you're going to do. That's why I put the graphs on here. Now, the nice thing about most of these problems that you're going to have to do is you're never going to have to find all six. Okay? So, all right. So most of the problems literally are going to say, like, find the sine of 300 degrees or find the cosecant of 300 degrees. Okay? So we're going to work all six just to practice that. But for your quiz tomorrow, you're only going to have to do one when you do it. Okay? So now, if you have your right triangles there, that's great. You should have your two special right triangles because that's what we're going to use for this. Okay, so if you're finding 300 degrees, draw the angle first, okay, in standard position. So 300 would be 90, 180, 270, and then 30 more degrees there, right? So therefore, what is our reference angle, which would be right here? How much would that be? Right, if this is 90, 180, 270, and that's 30, then this is 60 right here, right? Now, what you're going to do then is draw your triangle in down to the x-axis. You always draw it to the x-axis, guys. That is the main thing you have to do. Okay? And you always use this angle right here. So then, therefore, that must be 30 degrees, right? Okay? Now, in your 30, 60, 90 triangle, okay, opposite of 30 is a 1. The hypotenuse is 2. And then opposite 60 is radical 3. Now, based on what quadrant we're in, okay, which one of those things is negative? Any of these values going to be negative? The radical 3, right? Because it's down on the y. Positive 1, negative radical 3. That is the only thing you have to look at to change. Okay? You're going to have the triangle to refer to, so you're going to know where to put these values. You know where opposite they are. It's just a matter of getting the signs right. Here's one thing to remember. The 2 will never be negative, ever. Okay? So the hypotenuse can never be negative. It's only going to be one of the legs that could possibly be negative. All right? Remember that if you end up in the first quadrant, nothing will be negative. Okay? So now that we have this, you know, this is our 30, 60, 90 triangle that we're going to refer to. Okay? So just make sure that your signs are going to work out. All right? So now let's go down below here and find all the trig values. Okay? Now I'll redraw the triangle right here real quick that we just had just so you can see. But remember, it was 1, 2, and negative radical 3. So now, all you got to do, and remember, we're using this angle right here. That's the reference angle, right? So go from the reference angle, okay? So sine would be opposite over hypotenuse. Okay? Cosine would be adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent would be opposite over adjacent. All right? Now just flip them all over. Okay? So this is negative 2 over radical 3, which is if you multiply by radical 3 over radical 3, you get negative 2 radical 3 over 3. Okay? It's also helpful to know, like, what the reciprocal of this is when you do it, because then if you can kind of remember that, it helps to not have to do this part. Okay? Obviously this one's easy, 2 over 1. Which is 2, okay? And then cotangent, 1 over radical 3, and it's negative, so multiply by radical 3 over radical 3, and you get negative 1 radical 3 over 3, okay? Now, for your quiz tomorrow, I'm just going to tell you, you're going to have to draw the angle, you're going to have to make the triangle, but they're only going to ask you for one of those 6 things, okay? And guess what? It's multiple choice. The answer is going to be there in front of you. Okay? A lot of times it's going to be you deciding, like, whether it's a negative or a positive of this, you know, the same value. Okay? So that's all this is going to be. Draw the angle in standard position, make your special right triangle to the x-axis, and then figure out what the trig ratio is. Okay? All right. So let's do one like this. So let's draw our triangle first, and then we'll go do the trig function. So 855. Remember, the other way you could do one that is, one that's bigger than 360, guys, you could just sit here and say, all right, I'm going to do 855, I'm going to minus 360, and then I'm going to minus 360 again, and that at least tells me that I know I'm going to end up at 135, like on the graph, okay? I mean, if you want to draw the whole thing, that's fine. Like, it doesn't bother me whether you draw it or not, okay? But if you wanted to do that, it would be 360, 720, and then it would be all the way here at 135, okay? And that's what it ends up at, okay? Now, if we end up there, all right, if this is 135 from here to here, how much is left? 45. So then we're going to end up with a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Okay? So you're going to have that triangle to refer to, meaning you're going to have this. 1, 1, radical 2. The 45, 45, 90 triangle. All you have to do is figure out which one of those are going to be negative. Guess what? The radical 2 is never negative, ever. Okay? So you can put a radical 2 right there on the hypotenuse. Okay? Excuse me. And then we can put 1 here and then just figure out which one's negative, if any of them are. They don't they don't have to be, but one of them is, right? Which one? Right here, right? Okay? I mean, negative going left. That one's positive going up, okay? Really, it's a matter of like thinking of it as x or y being negative, okay? But once again, now all you got to do is go do the 6 trig function ratios with those 3 values right there, okay? So let's do that, all right? So down here, and I'm going to rewrite the triangle again just so you can see it. This was negative 1, 1, and radical 2. Okay? So sine is, and this is our angle right here. You have to go from that angle. Opposite over hypotenuse. So 1 over radical 2. If you rationalize that, that gives you radical 2 over 2. Okay? Cosine then is negative 1 over radical 2. Now, remember guys, if your reference angle is a 45-degree angle, sine and cosine have to be the same exact measurement. Okay? Just make sure your signs are right. So why would you rationalize again if you know that when you rationalize you're going to get radical 2 over 2? Like, save yourself some work. So this is going to be negative radical 2 over 2. Tangent is 1 over negative 1, opposite over adjacent, so that equals negative 1. That means cotangent is going to be negative 1. Okay? Now, the reason I write the first ones is because when you flip these guys, don't go and, flip this one. Go flip the original one. Okay? 1 over radical 2, that's going to be radical 2 over 1, which is just radical 2. Okay? Radical 2 over negative 1, okay, that's just going to be negative radical 2. Okay? So like I say, tomorrow on your little quiz, all it's going to say is like, find the cotangent of 855 degrees. And that's the only one you have to find. Now, maybe it's easier for you, like, as long as you remember which ones are reciprocals of each other as well, okay? But finding one of these 3 first and then flipping it. Like if I was asked to find the secant of this, I would always go find the cosine first and then just flip it to make sure, because I don't remember what secant is based on SOHCAHTOA, but I remember what these 3 are, and that's the ones I would use. Okay? Yes? You don't have, as long as you know where you end up, it's fine with me. Yes, just be at the place where you end up, and that's fine when you draw it. Because all you need is the reference angle. That's really what you're looking for. Okay? So literally, this is what you're going to practice today, except you only have to do 1. All right? Like on the homework I'm giving you today, it's going to say, like, find the sine of 150, find the cosine of 240, find, So remember that the reference angle that you get will always be a 30, a 45, or a 60 every single time. Okay? You just got to make sure you draw your triangle right and get your signs right. Okay? All right. That's it for this lesson on 2-2, second day. Thank you to our sponsors of the Deli and Golfapalooza. Okay? Have a good day.